time we're talking in here, and there is no microphone, but it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I know I can hear you. All right, folks, so again, I am so excited to have this event with some wonderful folks. I want to thank our co-sponsors, the Allentown EAC team. You could stand up. And of course, Make the Road. Yes! Make the Road is. You came out proud today. So just a little bit about why we're here and who we are. So first, I am again Maria Ocasio. I am with Penn Future and Conservation Voters of PA. As some of you folks may know, because I'm sure I've called you a million times, you know the pitch right now. But Penn Future, it is our 501c3, and we are focused on things like clean air, clean water, just all the important good stuff that I'm sure unites us all here tonight. And Conservation Voters of PA, which we have a strategic partnership with, is focused very much on the same things, except we're allowed to uplift and endorse some pretty good environmental champions. And as far as our co-sponsors, because again, they do deserve a shout out for helping put this together and the thought they have put in. Again, I said we have our Allentown EAC, and what the Allentown EAC does, if you folks are not aware, is they focus, or their vision is providing local residents with environmental knowledge. Moreover, a strong desire to conserve and protect our natural resources. And one of the ways that they achieve this is by influencing our local legislators, and also, again, reaching out to communities and talking to them like this. So again, this is why we thought it was just natural to have them here. And of course, we can't forget Make the Road. I see all your lovely shirts. And one thing I loved about Make the Road, again, they have many issues that they work on, but they chose to focus on this one tonight. And that is because they advocate for a society in which everybody in their community has access to clean water, to clean air, and again, they put their citizens in charge. So thought it was absolutely a natural fit. And now you're probably thinking, who are these lovely panelists who have been waiting to talk so long and came early, have their PowerPoints? Well, I am going to allow them to introduce themselves because they are that wonderful. And I'm going to start with Stevie. So Stevie, can you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you think we're going to talk about?
Sure. My name is Stevie Walst. I'm the Environmental Field Services Manager for the City of Allentown. I'm a land risk assessor and a registered environmental health specialist.
Thank you, Stevie. Very good. And then we have Liesl. Go ahead, Liesl. Introduce yourself with the lovely sticks.
Thanks, Maria. I'm Liesl Gross. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Lehigh County Authority. We provide water and sewer service to about 200,000 people in the city of Allentown and surrounding communities.
Very good. Angelo, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Angelo Ortega. I'm from Make the Road PA. We're a community-led nonprofit organization working to build community power to fight for justice, the working class, immigrant, and colors of community, or communities of color. I'm a resident here for 45 years, so I'm seeing the deterioration for that long.
Michelle.
I'm Michelle Giles. I'm the policy analyst for Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, and I'm also one of the co-coordinators for a shared vision for Pennsylvania's environment and communities.
Katie.
I am Katie Bloom. I'm the Political and Legislative Director for Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Rachel Leon. I'm a member of Bethlehem City Council, and I'm a member of the Climate Reality Project as well.
Very good. And so to start us off, Stevie, take it away.
Yes, we are going to
Work with me for a minute while I play with the lights. Oh, first track. Got it. Good. Oh, you need me to turn it on?
Yes.
Yeah, that would help with it.
Technology is great.
discussing lead poisoning prevention and control. Excuse me, I haven't done this in a while because of COVID. So it's a very complex topic with many stakeholders, as you can see. And since good development starts with good planning, we will be looking at lead from a historical perspective and reviewing current policies and programs so we can determine what should be done moving forward. So first of all, what is lead? In order to understand why lead was used for so many things and how and why it's hazardous, we need to understand its characteristics. So it's a heavy metal, soft, malleable, found in mines throughout the world. It's practically indestructible and persistent, and for that reason, it was added to paint to make it more durable and also to help with corrosion control. It was also added to gasoline to fix knocking or painting in engines and to help prevent wasting of gasoline. So, ironically and unfortunately, the most hazardous forms of lead are dust and fumes. So naturally, we put it into paint and gasoline. A couple more key characteristics about lead dust. It may be invisible to the naked eye, and it takes about an hour to settle out of the air. So why is lead bad? What are the health effects associated with lead exposure? As you can see, hopefully you guys can see all the way back there, but it can affect your nervous system, cause kidney damage, learning disabilities, speech, language, behavior problems, etc. In very high quantities, it can cause death. They are currently doing research studies, and they've been doing research studies, but more so on the long-term effects. So it's kind of interesting, lead exposure and IQ loss, lead exposure and dementia, also the crime-lead hypothesis, or lead crime hypothesis. Okay, so we're just gonna touch briefly on the historical perspective because lead has been a problem for a really long time, and it's been around for ever. So the use of lead dates all the way back to ancient times. It was used for medicine, makeup, paint, and it wasn't until around 200 BC when we have the first known documented reports of the poisonous effects of lead. So moving forward, the first piece of legislation to reduce childhood exposure wasn't introduced until 1920, and that was in Australia, not in the United States. So obviously a very large time gap before that. And just a show of hands, how many of you were under the age of 6 in like the 60s, late 60s, early 70s? Anyone? Okay. So the Chicago study that was done in the late 60s, it's very interesting. It found that the average lead level in children under 6 years old was 60 micrograms per deciliter. So chances are, if you lived in a city and you were in that age group during that time frame, you had some form of lead poisoning. Despite knowing the harmful effects, we still put it in candy, paint, toys, gasoline for a little while longer. So through the 70s and 80s, more research was done. Agencies such as OSHA and EPA were formed, and we really started to recognize lead poisoning as a problem, and we set a level to determine poisoning status, 40 micrograms per deciliter. Steps were taken to remove it from paint and gasoline. This was great for preventing future exposures and problems. However, it's not until the 90s that we see the first big piece of legislation to address the existing lead-based paint hazards in the US, and that was through Title 10. More legislation continued to be passed as a result, and then another large study was done in the late 90s, and levels dropped considerably, but that was attributed to removal of lead from gasoline, not paint. Moving into the early 2000s, more legislation, and unfortunately, it wasn't until 2016 that we see grant money really being readily available. Some grants were available prior to that, but they were not as accessible as they became in 2016. So as you can see, lead poisoning and prevention and control has come a long ways in the past 60 years. You know, with good development, it starts with good planning, and we also need funding and a workforce commitment to achieve these goals. Alright, so Title 10. I want to focus on the categories that we'll revisit for the policy recommendations, as that those areas can really use additional resources. So the first one, the lead-based paint activity requirements. So EPA has a renovation, repair, and painting rule that requires contractors performing renovation, repair, or painting projects in pre-1978 homes, childcare facilities, and preschools to be lead-safe certified by EPA. So a great rule, but it doesn't get enforced as much as it should. The next one, public education and lead paint disclosure requirements. So tenants and home buyers who purchase or rent target housing, which is housing that's built before 1978, are supposed to get the Protect Your Family pamphlet. I'm not sure if every landlord in Allentown is providing this resource to renters. And then finally, the EVL screening and management guidance. So right now, Medicaid requires testing at 1 and 2 years old, or one time between 2 years old and 6 years old if testing wasn't done previously. Other insurances and social service programs have varying requirements. So Head Start will do finger pricks, but WIC no longer requires that type of screening. Now Allentown, our favorite. So lead paint in Allentown, obviously we have a very old housing stock. The graph up there shows the statistical probability of a house having lead-based paint based on the year it was built. So a breakdown of Allentown housing, 62% was constructed prior to 1960. Of that, 25% was built between 1940 and 1959. So those houses have a 69% chance of containing some form of lead-based paint. And then the 37% that's built before 1940 has an 87% chance of containing some form of lead-based paint. And unfortunately, the majority of the pre-1940 homes are in Center City, Allentown. So what are we doing to address this issue? City of Allentown's lead poisoning prevention and control program is rooted in the Health Bureau. Begins with a community health specialist or nurse. They check our electronic reporting system daily for reports of elevated blood lead levels. So if there is a level of 20 or above, an EVL investigation begins and the control portion of the program is initiated. The EVL investigation involves both the community health specialist or nurse and a risk assessor from my team. After they conduct the risk assessment, do education, make sure interim controls are in place, a referral is made to our community housing manager, who's in charge of administering the HUD lead grants for the city. Right now we have a $5.7 million HUD grant, and we've completed 85 projects thus far through that program. And I have up there the past grants that we've received, but funding, again, really wasn't readily available until 2016. Lead abatement projects are very expensive. They can range anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000, with larger homes and homes in the historical district being upwards of $50,000. Yes. And then, so to circle back to the prevention portion of this, if we get notifications of an EBL that's between 3.5 or 20, we still offer that on-site consultation and education with our community health specialist. We bring Healthy Homes items, you can see here, buckets, sponges, duct tape, gloves, education. We have educational resources up there as well, to prevent that level from increasing and to prevent them from being poisoned. And the third way that people can get involved with this grant is just by contacting the community housing manager directly. If a landlord rents to families that have children 6 years old or younger, they can qualify for the grant. So those pamphlets are over there as well. According to the CDC, lead poisoning is 100% preventable, and this can be achieved through taking precautionary steps listed on this slide and also in those pamphlets. So just simple things, don't try to renovate old housing yourself. Always keep painted surfaces in good condition. Regularly wet clean floors, windowsills, other surfaces. Keep play areas clean. Wash children's hands, bottles, pacifiers, and toys often. And remove shoes or wipe soil off shoes before entering your house. Some cleaning supplies and home goods that can help protect your family are listed here with the approximate cost. Got those off of Amazon, so it might vary a little bit. But you know, to some people this might not seem like a lot of money, but to others it might seem like a lot of money. So keep that in mind. We offer everything except for the HEPA vacuum cleaner and the Brita filters through our Healthy Homes grant. And finally, policy recommendations and support that is needed. So adequate staff and resources to support existing programs on the federal, state, and local level. We need to fund and staff the current programs that we have because the policies are good. We just need to implement them a little further. I think EPA's RRP program needs a little more oversight and enforcement. Additionally, more resources are needed to provide training and certification courses to contractors. Just additional funding in general because lead abatement is very expensive. And a couple critiques we'd like to see with the grants themselves. So spending flexibility. Unfortunately, the grants that we have are lead-based paint only. So if it's not lead-based paint, we can't pay for abatement or removal or replacement, whatever it might be. Also finger pricks and lab orders. We only get a few lab orders that we can give out to uninsured. So if we had a lot more of those, we could screen more and get them connected to resources. More money for healthy home supplies to, you know, give families what they need, and eliminate project size denials. So this really only happened with the state grant. If the project was going to cost over a certain amount, they would deny it. So they would rather see the lead stay and be a hazard than give us the money. So yes, I know. But luckily the federal grants have been very good. And then finally, increase the income threshold for grant eligibility. So currently, if you make under 80% of the median salary, so the median salary for this area is for a family of four supposed to be $90,600. So if you make less than $72,500 for a family of four, you would qualify. So I don't know. I feel like even if you are making more than that, you still don't have the money, $30,000, $50,000 to fix your house the right way. And then finally, change who is included in the income calculation. So we're seeing more and more blended families. You know, grandma is living with the parents, aunts, uncles, even children. I don't think I moved out until I was 26. So all of those incomes count, even the Social Security checks that grandma is getting. So I think that should also be changed. And that's kind of all I have for you.
Thank you so much for that overview and that insight. And folks, if you have questions, we're going to hold off until the end. So just write them down and think about that one. But thank you. And next, Liesl.
Thank you. Stevie, that was great. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
And so Stevie talked about broadly lead and health hazards and what the city is doing and resources. I'm going to talk much more specifically about water and lead in our drinking water. And I want to start off by saying, making sure that everyone's aware is that the water that Lehigh County Authority provides is naturally lead-free. There is no lead in the water that we supply to your home or to the street in front of your home. The issue really is the water that flows through the pipe and gets into your plumbing has contact with lead plumbing, and that's how the lead gets into your drinking water. I'm not sure that everybody is aware of that. I see a lot of nodding heads, so I won't belabor that issue. But certainly that's an important starting point for the conversation. When we're talking about lead in drinking water, we're really talking about plumbing, the service line material, plumbing materials inside your home, as well as the service line that goes from your home out into the street. So when water comes into contact with that lead plumbing and the lead gets into the water, that's what we're most concerned about. That happens more often or at higher levels when the water sits in the pipe for a long period of time, such as overnight. So that first glass of water that you have or that cup of coffee that you make, that's where we have the highest concentrations most of the time with lead in drinking water. So what we're doing, what Lehigh County Authority is doing, first of all, just as a baseline, we treat the water to the highest standard that we possibly can. And we also, as part of that process, make sure the water has neutral chemical properties. So like if you know about pH, we're keeping the water very neutral so that it reduces the amount of corrosion of the plumbing. That helps somewhat. So we have very high quality water that reduces the corrosive qualities of the water. However, we also do lead testing according to EPA standards, so we are following the requirements for testing. But we do understand there's really no safe level of lead in drinking water. And EPA is also in the process of changing its rules. So we're really excited about, but also anxious about what that will mean for us as a utility, and looking for more proactive ways to remove lead from the system. So it's a really challenging problem for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't know where all the lead service lines are in Allentown. So for example, we believe that we have about 5,000 lead service lines. So anywhere from the street all the way into the house at the water meter that's in your basement, we know we have about 5,000 of them in Allentown that are lead somewhere along the way. However, the other complicating factor is that from the curb to the house is private property ownership. So Lehigh County Authority in the city of Allentown, the ownership only goes from the street to the curb. And then from the curb into the house is the homeowner responsibility. And so that comes with a cost if we were to have homeowners replace their private portion of their plumbing. It can be very expensive, not $50,000 per house. Hopefully, most of the time we're looking in the range of $3,000 to $6,000. But in Allentown, where we have a lot of concrete and curb work and paving, and there's a lot to doing a plumbing replacement or a service line replacement. So the way that we're approaching the new EPA requirements is to first work on the inventory. So we can find out where all the lead service lines actually are. That's a very important first step because number one, EPA requires it. So we have to have an inventory. We don't currently have a full inventory. There's about 9,000 services out there that we don't know what they're made of. So getting the inventory in place is really a critical first step. And then working on strategies to prioritize and replace those service lines is another, going to be another major effort. We're trying to be proactive about that now because the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act makes funding available now. It may not be available in the future when EPA deadlines kick in. So the way that EPA works is they'll put a rule out and they'll give water utilities 3 years or some period of time to try to comply. Well, that's out in the future. The funding's available now. So we're working on the inventory so we can package grant applications for the service line replacement, and specifically on the private side, because we know that homeowners in Allentown likely can't afford, or it will be a hardship to have them replace the private side service line. So I have a little show and tell for you to kind of get some context for what we're talking about, and one of the ways that we're trying to get the inventory built up is through customer feedback. We really would love to have all customers in Allentown, tenants, homeowners, anyone who lives in Allentown, go to our website and do a survey to tell us what their plumbing is made of. And specifically, if you go into your home and see where your water meter is, it's the pipe that comes through the basement wall or through the crawl space wall and connects to the meter. That's the service line that we're looking for. So there's a couple different options of what you might see. We don't have too much of this in Allentown, but there are some plastic service lines. I think would be fairly obvious to most homeowners that this is not metal. You can tell just by how it sounds and how it looks that it's not metal. So this is a PVC service line. Copper, we see a lot of copper, and this would also be relatively easy for a homeowner to identify. One of my props, penny, it's the same color as a penny. So that's a helpful hint. But we would like to know if it's copper, is it plastic? We also have 2 older service lines here to show you, and these are 2 really great examples because they're clearly metal, but it may not be clear what type of metal it is. And so in Allentown, the most prevalent types of service lines we have are galvanized steel or lead. And so if you're looking at a gray metal material, what is it? Is it galvanized steel or is it lead? And so a couple quick things that you could do is take an ordinary quarter or dime and scrape it just lightly, see if it turns shiny. If it turns shiny, it is more likely to be lead. You can come up and look at these later. You could also, as Stevie mentioned, lead is malleable. So not with anything like a screwdriver, but with your fingernail, you can press on it and make a mark on a lead service line. You can't do that on a steel line. And if you're really not sure, the easiest thing is to take a magnet, and the magnet will stick to steel, but it will not stick to lead. So very easy test to do, but to make sure you know what your service line material is before you do the survey would be really great. We have the survey on our website and are trying to get as many participants in the process as we can. If you're not sure and you like to talk to someone, our customer service staff is available to do that. Our customer service staff can do the survey with you over the phone if you're not connected to the internet, or if you need Spanish-speaking survey, we can do that with you over the phone as well. So that's my advertisement for the survey. It's really important. So just a couple things to wrap up. If you find you have a lead service line, what should you do? Well, certainly if you have the means to replace it, we would not discourage you from doing that. However, there are some simple things that you could do to reduce your exposure to lead. The easiest thing would be to use water for things other than drinking first thing in the morning. So as I mentioned, when the water sits in your pipe for a long period of time, that's when you might have more water or more lead in your water. So get up, take a shower, run the dishwasher, do things that use water before you take that glass of water. Or you put water in your fridge, so you're drinking your tap water that's refrigerated from the day before, and that will reduce the amount of water or lead in your water. Also, cleaning your faucet aerators is a great idea to do that as regular home maintenance. If you have particles that come from your pipes and get stuck in your aerator of your faucets, that can actually increase the amount of lead in your drinking water. So, the information I just shared with you about how to identify your service line, the survey, lots of other great information about where the service line is the public side versus the private side. All of that information is on our website, some great fact sheets available. Some are printed out here, and I should introduce Susan Sampson, our communications manager, bringing all my props and handouts and doing great work for us. Sue's done a great job with also pushing this information out on social media, through our billing newsletters, and just trying to get the community really aware of what we're trying to do in terms of gathering the information. So just to kind of close, as we're building the service line inventory and gathering that information, we will be proactively applying for grant funding through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and trying to focus that grant funding on the private side replacements of the service lines, so we can make that resource available to the community. However, the grant application process will be competitive and timely, because the money's available right now. I just learned the other day Pittsburgh has applied for $25 million of the grant funding that's available in Pennsylvania, like it is as soon as it became available. So we need to be proactive and get our own grant applications in so we can support the residents of our town, and appreciate the community involvement and the community interest.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, we love a good show and tell, and you folks have to come up and play with us because this is amazing today. To kind of just give it a little more of a personal touch, we have this phenomenal volunteer right here, Angelo, to kind of tell us you've been a resident here for 45 years?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can tell us a lot about what you've seen, so please, Angelo, go ahead.
Actually, hello everyone, thank you for the invitation this evening. I'm Angelo Ortega. I've lived here 45 years. We grew up on the east side in what was a soapbox built in 1889. We started from scratch, and it wound up to become a 5-bedroom, 2.5-bath home. Today it's a parking lot at the Eastside Youth Center, but that's not the home that we're in right now. My mother decided with my brother they'd go into another home. I decided, well, it's more than a year now, that I would move in with them. Hurricane Ida hit us this past year. The year was going great, and all of a sudden the storm hits and the basement floods. I was basically living in the basement because I had my furniture in there. It's a finished basement, paneling and walls in some areas and so forth. And I had to get rid of my sleeper sofa for when company came to visit me, my bed, this and that. I wound up just with dining room, things that were upright in chairs and so forth. What devastates the most is you keep cleaning. And this experience has left homes unsafe in the neighborhood. We do not have a sewage system that runs off of Cedar Crest Boulevard to Spring House Road. So there's no drainage except the drainage that people have put in their ground, and for their gutters and so forth. The corner buildings, flooded, because we're seeing the truckloads now actually flooded, and, they had to tear apart and gut the entire first floor, and they have the edifice. They have a home that I guess their drain pipes drain down to their backyard, which got into their first floor home. It's devastating to see that everybody's doing this out of pocket. This is where we started with, in Allentown, working with the whole home repairs project. And we were a little unsure, but we had a lot of persons that were very interested in the money and what we can do and who we were fighting for and what could be done then afterwards. We went from there to Harrisburg and back to Harrisburg to lobby. And then now, with Governor Wolf, we've gotten 430 million, I think, total. For renovations here in Pennsylvania. That's not only whole homes, that's also rent rebate and housing, which is very necessary, especially in the Allentown area. Now, where I'm more concerned is how are we going to distribute this? How are we going to allocate for this now? Pull in the funds and everything. How are we going to organize to see that this is appropriated to an office where we can get these persons in line or on paper and start distributing some of these funds. In my mother's home alone, I've been cleaning up the mold, the mildew. It just, the mold's not gonna leave the walls and the paneling. If I want a water base or a water, what's it called? Basement waterproofing done to the walls, I have to tear down the pre-existing paneling and walls to get the waterproofing done on the walls, and then that payment I foresee that payment has to proceed putting this back together again. This is a concern that we should have, because of the fact that, like she just said, people are pulling, or someone just said, people are pulling for this money already. Pittsburgh has gotten 25 million. We need something in Lehigh County. I know for a fact because we went through our regular insurance company. They couldn't do anything because we weren't declared a natural disaster relief area. For some reason, Lehigh County's being left out. We went through FEMA because we didn't, they went and checked again, and they said, wait a minute, they're gonna decide once again that, we can get funding for IDA, and, with FEMA, we were called back and told to hold on to that paperwork because they left out Northampton and Lehigh County again. So, this is where whole homes repairs, is very special to our heart, to our people, and to everything that, conservation. Climate change is changing. We want green, and the Northeastern project here is it's decreasing the precipitation. There's more frequent storms, higher average of temperatures we're experiencing now for almost 2 or 3 weeks, and this only exacerbates structural damage because some things contract and constricted, contract, I think it's, and this is not good, for foundations and so forth. We have a cement foundation, it's already starting to slant, it's slanting on the opposite direction, it's supposed to slant out, for some reason it's going towards the house now. They just, I just recently moved into the home, they've been there a couple of years already. They're up in age, parents up in age, so there's a certain desire that you want them to live comfortably. But you get to the point where when persons are saying no and officers are saying to go to the next person, we had the advantage and took forward the opportunity with our representatives and the senators and so forth, and said, yeah, let's go to the next person. Let's ask them to turn and make whole home repairs a bill they want to pass. And we did so, and I'm glad to say and thank everyone who partook of it. Anyone that counseled us and wanted to show us a way and said, stick with the effort. I'd like to say thank you and hope to hear from more of you in the future.
Okay, folks, so thank you very much for that personal insight, Angelo. I think we have a lot to think about, right? We have a lot to digest, a lot of in-depth things that again we need to approach. And so to that vein, I always like to think, okay, so what's the next step? What can we do? And I believe Stevie, Liesl, and Angelo alluded to the possible solutions that are out there, but I want to just dig a little deeper into what more we can do. So we are going to start with Michelle. If you can give us a little bit of what this shared vision is, why we're doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak with you all today. As I said earlier, I'm one of the co-coordinators for a shared vision. Okay. So essentially, it's the Pennsylvania Common Environmental Agenda, formerly named a Shared Vision for Pennsylvania's Environment and Communities. And it brought together 40+ organizations from around Pennsylvania to discuss what the major issues were regarding the environment. These organizations include bigger statewide names like CBPA and the Sierra Club, as well as more local community organizations like Northeast PA's Pan-African Coalition and the Sustainable Business Network. Our goal was really to take some organizations' knowledge about what people are going through and how their daily lives are impacted by climate change, by the lack of money and resources in their neighborhoods, and by aging infrastructure, and combine that with the technical expertise of these larger advocacy organizations. After many, many months of discussions, multiple drafts, and countless edits, we produced a shared vision. It was officially released to the public in Harrisburg on August 2nd during a press conference, and we have spent the past few weeks sharing it with community members and with other organizations. And as we head into the fall, we will be sharing this document with candidates so that they can understand what the environmental priorities are of tens of Pennsylvania's advocacy organizations and the memberships that they represent. That being said, I know that the most powerful place to provide this information is with the people, so that all of you are aware of what solutions could be made available to your communities by your leaders to improve everyone's quality of life, opportunities for prosperity, and the environment you live within. So the document is broken down into different sections. There's air, water, democracy, thank you, environmental education, labor, and housing and land use. So our housing and land use section was partially modeled after the Whole Home Repairs Act. And my colleague Katie Bloom will discuss in more detail, also my model, what our priorities are to improve Pennsylvania's aging housing stock, removing lead from homes, and what the Whole Home Repair Act means for Pennsylvania. So thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Michelle and Katie, if you can follow up.
Yes, it was quite an experience to put all of this together. was an environmental common agenda done in 2018. Off the top of my head, so please don't quote me, there were 42 policy initiatives laid out in there. And I believe no more than 6 got done. I think it was actually only 4, but I'm going to be optimistic with my not so great memory of last week at this point, and say that it was 6. So we have a huge opportunity. When we just saw massive conservation investments and environmental investments in the state budget and Governor Wolf's extra addition to rent rebates and things like that, we have an opportunity because the climate, pun intended, seems a little more welcoming of getting some of these programs done. And we were really, really intentional, just like our wonderful friends at Make the Road, being part of this process and hearing from the communities like Michelle said. One of the biggest things, especially thinking about lead paint, lead in our water, flooding issues, is Pennsylvania is home to some of the oldest housing stock in the entire country. About 40% of units were built before 1950. I live in an 1889 house myself, kind of like what you grew up in, hours away from here. And about 95% before 1978, and that 1978 number's critical, especially for things like lead paint that was discussed earlier. And it is estimated that there's about 200,000 homes in Pennsylvania that are in desperate need of repair. So we know all of this. And the Whole Home Repairs Act itself, just taking out that act came from the federal surplus money that the state got. I kind of want to explain this a little bit. The ARP, the American Rescue Plan, right at the beginning of 2020, or 2021, we had the American Rescue Plan. And that is how the state ended up having all of these supplemental funds. So what happened is everyone was buying, a lot of people wanted to just save that money, but we had an opportunity to spend it. And $125 million is going to whole home repairs. And if Pittsburgh only is getting, and I say only because I know it's probably more than 25 million for their lead pipes from the federal government, we know that 125 million in whole home repairs is not enough. Maybe it's enough for next year's grant program, maybe 2 years of a grant program, and we have to keep working on this and working with our elected officials to expand and extend the whole home repairs program. And that program itself at the state level, DCED will be administering those grants starting in 2023. And it'll help with blighted buildings. It will help with various lead concerns, asbestos, and weatherization. And we know weatherization is also really important because you see your electricity rates completely skyrocket, which becomes unaffordable, especially with things that we have seen this year. And I can go on a tangent about fossil fuel companies and energy, which is included in another section in here. But there are other really good policy ideas, and we make sure that in a shared vision, at the end, we have a brief explainer of all of them. There's a lot more than 42 this time around between the entire document. And a lot of these policies also talk about how the state can more efficiently administer programs as well, making sure that DEP and other agencies have appropriate staffing and oversight to do some of the work around, say, the lead paint programs. Right now, DEP, as of July 6th, DEP had staffing levels at 2004 levels. They've been cut and cut and cut and cut. As of July 7th, I think they're getting maybe 30 new staff members out of the budget, so it's something. But this is some of that ARP investment. The other thing that we're seeing is also with other federal programs, and it was referenced earlier with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Pennsylvania will be getting part of this money, as mentioned, for lead pipe service line replacements. $15 billion included in the Federal Infrastructure Act to be allocated. And granted, that $15 billion is across the country. The larger cities like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia are obviously going to need those higher dollar amounts, but even, you know, Bethlehem is a little bit smaller than Allentown. I think there are ways for us to continue looking at that. And not only is it going to help communities and hopefully homeowners as the program develops and guidance is issued, but also it could help some of the local governments expand their programs as well. So we'll see what happens with that and how that gets administered. The other thing that we are seeing right now in the state legislature, in what we call the budget month, which extended into July, the Pennsylvania Senate passed what is called SB 522, and it's a lead testing bill. And we were floored that they finally decided to move a lead testing bill that would do something. And it would detect pregnant women and all children in Pennsylvania would receive blood tests to detect lead poisoning. And it's based on recent Pennsylvania Department of Health's childhood lead surveillance report that says only 30% of children under the age of 2 were screened for lead in 2018. With the pandemic, we don't necessarily have full current numbers. And healthcare officials, municipal officials feel that all children at this point can be at risk, especially with aging schools as well. Care facilities, playgrounds, and other kinds of areas. It's not just in the home. So we hope that in the new legislative session, they're not going to be in Harrisburg that much this fall. As somebody who works with them regularly, I'm okay with that. But we expect in the next couple of years to see better legislation around lead testing start. The House has not been willing to move it, and I have no problem calling out a specific legislator. House GOP leader Carrie Benninghoff, whose own child has serious health issues, does not want to move a childhood lead testing bill. His office has not accepted a lot of conversations around that. I'm gonna blatantly call that out because it's our job to hold legislators accountable. And we need to do a lot of work to convince the House going forward to at least test lead in our children. So that's kind of a broad overview. There's almost 20 policy solutions just on housing, green space, heat zones, that all impact all of these things that can make our communities better. And that is my overview.
All right, thank you, Kate. I love the passion, I love it. All right, now folks, we started on the local level, and that's kind of where I want to end it. So I want to see, Rachel, can you tell us, what are we doing in our backyard, our sister city in Bethlehem?
Okay, so I'm not overviewing, I'm narrowing in on a lead ordinance. So Bethlehem does have a lead ordinance. It is, as you said, kind of a good baseline, but not as forward thinking as we would like to see. So with Bethlehem's lead ordinance, it is very focused on using the Lead and Healthy Homes program and programs like the Lead Hazard Control Program, which are income-based programs in order to remediate lead within homes. What we're seeing in our older housing stock, which is usually rental units, a lot of places are not qualifying for it because there's a lot of movement within our rental units. One statistic that always boggles my mind is in South Bethlehem, Donegan had a 60% mobility rate within its students. So of 10 students that started the school year, 6 of them left the South Side and the school. So with that kind of turnover, what we're seeing is that in the rental units that are there, they're not qualifying for these programs because either the young children are leaving or they're not signing leases that are lasting long enough to get some kind of remediation of lead within the units. So within the Bethlehem lead ordinance specifically, it's very reactionary. So a child has to test positive for elevated lead levels in order for the city to really get involved. But I feel like that's a really good point where we can talk about the local level ordinances and where activism kind of plays into how we can push for lead ordinance changes. So what we can do is, if we know that a lot of our rental units have lead in them, instead of having something that says a rental unit that has a child would qualify for a program, we know that rental units come up for rent every year, which means at some point that unit would most likely have a child there. So what we can push for, and which is what I'm currently working with our amazing health department to push for, is all rental units should be tested for lead. All rental units should go through a remediation program. And that would take an ordinance like our ordinance, which is a good baseline, that tests for lead and has these programs that can help people who might not have the funding to do it, and make it very proactive so we can really move the needle forward.
That's all I got.
That's fantastic. All right, folks. Well, before I open it up for questions, I do have one more Rachel from the Sierra Club. You're probably thinking, what is all that other stuff? I know other people have mentioned we have stuff on the table, but there are some other things. Well, Rachel's gonna tell you some fun stuff, so Rachel.
Sure. My name is Rachel Rosenthal, and I'm the online organizer for the Pennsylvania chapter of Sierra Club. We're a statewide environmental advocacy organization. Remember Lead, and we actually have 10 groups throughout the state, one of which is based here in the Lehigh Valley and has been here for about 40 years. We were a participant of putting together the shared vision for Pennsylvania, and I'm just here in case anyone has any questions. I live in Allentown, and so I drink the water, and I care about all of you and our community, and so I'm just here to represent our organization and support this effort.
Okay, folks, please don't be shy. Do you have questions? Because I know I was kind of shocked to find out we have 5,000 pipes that we don't know. We have to create an inventory. That's actually a little scary. It's illuminating.
We have 9,000.
Excuse me, 9,000. There you go. So I gave it a little bit of leeway. So I have many questions, but I want to open up to you folks first because you're here. Don't be shy. I'll call on random people. Go ahead.
And this is a question for Liesl Gross. Hi, Liesl.
Hi.
Are you still looking for residents that might participate in a lead testing program?
Okay, you're talking about the water testing program. Yeah, so the lead testing program that EPA requires water utilities to conduct has some pretty strict parameters regarding who can participate. So a home that has a lead service line, that does not have a softener, and that can follow the instructions for the testing protocol, we are looking for those people. So if you look in your home and you've got plastic or copper or galvanized, you may not be eligible for testing through our program, but certainly if you have a lead service line and you're interested in being part of the lead water testing program, let us know, and there's space in the survey for you to indicate that. Oh, wow, since you asked about that also, thank you. Another piece I wanted to mention, very, very important, if you are doing the survey, submit a photo of your service line along with the survey, because that will help us to validate. You are not necessarily all plumbers, so if you fill out the survey in good faith and send a photo, that will help us to validate that service line. Did I hit any other points you want me to hit,
Well,
Jenny?
I was just wondering too about the survey. You mentioned it before, but I think it bears repeating that if you test your pipe yourself and it's not lead, please still complete the survey,
Yes.
because that's valuable information to have.
Right.
It helps to lower that number. And that number, Liesl, is that the combination of public and private, or is it just?
Yeah, it's an estimate. So we have roughly 5,000 confirmed lead service lines and about 9,000 that we don't know what they are on either side, one or the other side. And then
helpful for organizations like Conservation Voters or Make the Road to maybe share that survey out?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good question.
Yeah. I'm like, let's share it out.
Yeah.
Emails are coming, folks.
And the way I mentioned Sue Sampson, our communications manager, the way she has set our website up, it's lehighcountyauthority.org. As soon as you hit that website for the first time, you get a pop-up saying, have you done the lead survey? So if you just share our website, people will get it.
Oh, cool, thank you.
Did I do that right? Okay.
I did have another question. You're off the hook, Lisa.
Okay, sure.
And it's for Katie, but I don't remember your last name. I apologize.
Bloom, like Judy Bloom.
Oh, cool. That's good. When you were talking about the funding that was available for homeowners, are you talking about owner occupied, or were you also talking about?
It's both. Whole home repairs is both. There are certain amounts that landlords versus homeowners can apply for, but it is for both landlords and direct homeowners as well.
Are you
Which is
expect-
also part of the reason why 125 million is not enough.
Were you expecting landlords then to provide some relief, or if they're getting this, how are we? You see where I'm going. I want to make sure that our renters are getting the benefit and not being impacted again by maybe a repair.
There are stipulations that
Yeah.
are still being placed in order where if they're landlords and they're renters and the work is being done while they're renting, they have to stay on it. They haven't decided how many years, but they have to stay on from 7 to 15 years, something like that, in that rental unit. So it's guaranteeing them a home.
And it's guaranteeing the landlord income after matching whatever expenditure they need to do the remediation. But again, 2023, we haven't seen like grant application language yet. We just know the basic premises.
All right, you just answered my question.
Yeah.
Which is there a place where we can look at how to get the grant,
Yep.
grants?
It'll be active for DCED applications in 2023.
So we have to wait until 2023 to actually.
And I'm sorry, DCED, by the way, is the Department of Community and Economic Development.
Yeah.
I'm awful with acronyms.
Yeah, yes, but we can't actually start looking at what the requirements are gonna be and how to do the application until 2023.
Yeah, it's only very basic language that was included in the legislation in the budget with, I mean, if you really wanna go through several hundred pages. But some pretty basic stuff that we already mentioned about how landlords and renters, et cetera, people who qualify for it, so there's some of that general language in there, but the specifics will be out through DCED. And I'm assuming they're probably sometime mid to late fall might start having some of those documents up. We just know the program is not up till 2023, and earlier today I double checked their website and it's still only 2 paragraphs that it's coming, so.
Thank you.
It-
I have a question for you. If it runs, the budget runs June 30th of every year.
Technically.
So that 125 million, these people can't apply for until September or October.
Mhm.
What's gonna happen with that money that's not spent by June 30th?
It's still there allocated for the program, right? So that money is there until all of the money is spent. It doesn't matter when the fiscal year of the state is, it's there until the money's spent. So we have, if they're starting to spend this money next year, then maybe next year during the budget season, we go, hey, do you guys wanna allocate another 100 million to that program so we can keep beefing it up?
That would be a good thing
Yep.
to do because it's really crucial to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Mike right in saying it rolls over into the next fiscal year?
Yeah, it'll roll over until the funding is spent. Yep.
Go ahead, Nadine.
Given that many of the houses are old enough that their inside was probably painted first with lead-based paint, if the walls have since then been painted over, you don't usually scrape the walls off, will the non-lead-based paint that would be put over it, would that hold the paint, the lead that's on the first level?
No.
No,
Yeah, unfortunately not. There's paint breakdown and substrate factors that go into that. So yeah, unfortunately, just painting over lead-based paint is not going to abate the problem. There's different interim controls you can do, but yeah, basically we would want to see a full abatement. And then, because you're renovating a home that was built before 1978, you should be hiring a contractor that is certified in lead-safe work practices.
Yeah, but there's no way they're going to scrape all the paint that was originally put on the ceiling and
No, they're gonna most likely encapsulate it, or so you can. It's like a glue paint. So you do paint stabilization, and then you can put this glue paint over it. It's really sticky stuff.
So there's a special kind of
Yes.
thing you put there to hold it.
Yeah, after you stabilize the paint. Other ways we've seen drywall be used to enclose lead-based paint that's shipping. So putting a layer on it. Exterior, we also see a lot of enclosures. So putting the vinyl siding over that wooden siding that has the paint, or at least containing the lead-based paint and preventing it from creating dust and getting into the soil.
Thank you, Stevie.
there have been, surveys too, where children have been investigated too, from chipping the paint in apartments, getting back to the lead base, it still contaminates them, so.
Yeah, so friction and impact surfaces, you're not supposed to use encapsulant on. You're supposed to remove the paint or replace the windows because, you know, something's rubbing on it. It's eventually going to get down to that layer. But like a wall is not a friction or impact surface. So that's where you would see the encapsulant used.
I would just add and agree with Katie. It's not enough, $125 million, but the way the plan and make the road work where it's under Saval, and it was just to start the process. But it's made in a way that you can keep adding money to it, and it's not just $50,000 for repairs; it's also for a work training program, and also it's for the application process. So I have a prediction that money's going to go away pretty fast. So this is why it's important to do a lot of activism, and it's really a team effort where like there's electeds, nonprofits, individuals, all kinds of people, because it was a lot of work to pass whole home repairs. It really was.
And thank you, Armando. Excellent point. Thank you for your work. All right, folks, do we have any more questions? Well, if we do not, you can certainly come up and look at the awesome objects, and you can certainly grab some information up there. And I want to thank you again for your time and all your energy. Thank you, folks. Thank you.